Good morning, everyone. It's the appointed time and we have already formed the quorum. Let's get started with the meeting of the PWSC today. During the 2013-14 electrical session, as at the last meeting, we have already scrutinized 3 projects involving a total sum of $33.2223 billion, and out of that, the public works projects or capital works projects accounted for some $29.4714 billion, and together with the items that have been rolled forward from the December 18th meeting, we have a total of 5 discussion papers today involving the upgrade of 5 capital works projects to Cat A, and the amount is $622.7 million. And if all the items are approved, then there will be 8 items involving a total funding of $33.845 billion. And out of that, the total amount of funding relating to works projects would amount to $39 billion. And I'd like to remind members that if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interests, please disclose those interests under Rule 83(1)(3)(a). And where there is direct pecuniary interest, please also be reminded of the rule concerning the disclosure of interest under Rule 84. And the first item is PWSC 2013-14-30, Footbridge across Po Yap Road linking Tseung Kwan O Area 55 and Area 65. And paper number is PWSC 30. This item proposes to upgrade project item 160 TB, entitled Footbridge across Po Yap Road linking Tseung Kwan O Area 55 and Area 65 to Cat A at an estimated cost of $80.5 billion in money of the day prices. On the 26th of November 2013, the administration consulted the development panel on the proposed item, and members generally supported that, and the relevant issues have table in the table before members. With us today, we have Mr. Tseung Kwan, Deputy Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury, Mr. Wai Chi-sheng, Permanent Secretary for Development Works, Mr. Thomas Chan, Deputy Secretary for Development, and Ms. Anissa Wong, Permanent Secretary for the Environment, and Ms. Jasmine Choi, Principal Assistant Secretary for the FSTB. And to answer any questions relating to this item, we have Mr. Kevin Choi, Principal Assistant Secretary for Development, Mr. Hon Chi-kung, Director of Civil Engineering and Development, and Mr. Eric Tiang, Chief Engineer, New Territories East, from the Civil Engineering and Development Department. And if members have any questions, please press the button to request to speak. All right, no questions. If none, then I'll put the item to the vote. For those in favor of this item, please raise their hands. For those against, please raise their hands. I think the majority of members are present and participating in the vote are in favor. So I declare that the item has been approved. Moving on to the next item. All right, this item is Head 711 Housing, paper number PWSC 2013-14, 31. Main engineering infrastructure in association with the proposed developments in Area 56, Tung Chung, and this item proposes to upgrade 742CL to Cat A at an estimated cost of $54.8 million in money of the day prices for the design and construction of the engineering infrastructure in association with the proposed developments in Area 56, Tung Chung. On the 4th of November 2013, the administration consulted the housing panel on the item, and members indicated their support for the funding proposal, and the relevant discussion or points that have been discussed have been tabled before members. With us today, we have Mr. Kenneth Wong, Chief Civil Engineer from the Transport and Housing Bureau, and Mr. Hon Chi Kang, Director of CEDD, and Mr. David Low, Chief Engineer, Islands, from the CEDD. For members who would like to ask questions on the item, please raise their hands or press the button. We have Mr. Chen Hang Pen. Yes, Mr. Chen Hang Pen. 4 minutes, including both questions and answers. All right, thank you, Chairman. I support the construction of housing in Area 56, but that with regard to traffic and other infrastructure, well, the Islands District Council, Mr. Chow Ho Ting, has been very concerned about this. And I'd like to say that in a paper, it says that in 2011, there was a round of consultation with the Islands District Council. I'd like to know whether or not the District Council was in favor of your proposal. And secondly, with regard to the traffic infrastructure, have you got any detailed planning? Because according to my understanding, basically, you did not have anything concrete in your plan. So would you be submitting the traffic and transport planning details to us? Or are you saying that all right, there will be a very elongated bus terminus, because we're concerned that if that continues and there will be reclamation on the other side, then the road might be overburdened. So can you give us more details? All right. So it's a comment from a district councillor, and secondly is about traffic planning. Well, the Islands District Council supported our proposal with regard to traffic arrangements. At present, there are many buses running in the district. There we have 37 S56, and then for buses plying outside the district, they would also go to other districts, for example, Tin Hau, Hong Ham, Ho Man Tin, and Chin Wan. And according to our discussion with the bus operators, they are of the view that for these bus routes, basically they are already adequate in serving the community there, but then with the intake of population, they would be amending or revising the routes in order to cater for the situation after the intake of population towards the end of 2016. And according to the plan, every year there will be a route development plan every year, and then they would go to the district council to brief them on the details of that RDS. And then after that, once the details are finalized, then of course more information can be provided to members. Thank you. All right, Mr. Chen, you'd like to ask further questions? Yes, in Tung Chung, for residents and district councillors alike, they are thinking that upon the intake of population, if there is service provided by GMBs, then that would be nice. So I hope that you can think about that, and I hope that the Transport Department can also plan for that too. So, Mr. Wong, actually we have also discussed this with the Transport Department, and the Transport Department's view is that in areas where they are not served by franchise services, then they would arrange for GMBs to serve those areas, or if there are inaccessible areas because of some restrictions or constraints, then they would consider arranging for GMB service to reach there. But then they would basically look at the traffic conditions on the ground before they make a decision. So they'll be monitoring that closely. All right, next, Mr. Albert Chan, and then Mr. James To. Yes, Albert Chan, please. Chairman, just now I heard the response from the administration saying that if areas are already served by franchise buses, then there'll be no GMB service. That's not true. I don't think we should be bogged down by this, because this is not about traffic and transport, because this is a public works project. But then I think the administration is distorting the truth, because in many areas, GMBs and also buses might be duplicating or overlapping certain routes and catchment areas. And in Tung Chung, what is lacking is that we do not have any GMB services right now. I think it's a mistake, and it's a complete failure. And the Transport Department has totally ignored the interests and rights of the residents, because in terms of transport infrastructure, we should not just have railway and buses, we should also have minibuses, because I think throughout the territory we have GMB serving everywhere, but then in Tung Chung there is none. And therefore, in terms of planning, I think Tung Chung residents do not have to have supportive or supporting traffic. So I think we will have to correct what the Transport Department has told us. And I'd like to put on record that I do not agree with that, because I think it's a total mistake. All right, with regard to the other development plans for Tung Chung, as we all know, Tung Chung earlier on, if you look at the new town development, we have this consultation on the comprehensive development of Tung Chung. And for this project, I understand that this has to do with some of the existing planning, but then where there are major changes to the planning and development in the future, then for this particular project, in terms of how you're going to work within this, would that result in making substantial changes after the contract has been signed? So, with regard to future development decisions, will there be any conflict with this project? Yes. As Mr. Albert Chen just said, well, we are doing a study on the Tung Chung Extension Town Center. We have conducted 2 rounds of public consultation, and for the next round of public engagement exercise in around March, or in 2 or 3 months' time, we'll be launching that. With regard to this road and also the housing development here, well, basically, that would not be affected by the new study. So there is no question of anything that would not be done in a coordinated way. So we'll be considering all the possibilities in doing this, because one of the controversial areas is that for the location of the new Tung Chung railway station, because there are different considerations and proposals, and of course there was a proposal, but then there are people who did not agree with that, and therefore for the siting of the future railway station, will that affect this project? So it's about the location of the future railway station. I don't think that would directly affect this project, but then as regards the new siting, as Mr. Chen puts it, we are still in the process of consulting the stakeholders. We haven't come to a decision, but then there are suggestions that in Tung Chung there would be a new MTR station, but then no decision has been taken. In any case, it's not going to affect this site and this project. Next, James To. Chairman, I agree with what Mr. Albert Chen just said. I'm of the view that in particular in Tung Chung, with the increase in population, if the transport policy, well, yes, this is not the right forum for discussing that, but then I'd like to put on record that I do not agree that for the entire district, in your design, there will be no GMB service at all. And only franchise buses are allowed to serve the area. But then just looking at the plan, all right, L16, well, there is a layout plan here, and one of the entrances would be going into area 56, and towards the end of it, or towards the tip of it, the eastern tip, you can see that there is almost a cul-de-sac, there is a roundabout. And I've also made reference to some of these designs. Well, I do not quite agree that we should have a cul-de-sac here, and you would find that it looks very strange. It looks like an appendix. All right, in the middle of it, yes, there is an access to area 56, but then it's not going to be from the end of the road. All right, there are buses going into this area, and in the future, I don't know if you've completed the design for the housing estates there. So in the roundabout at the end of the road or at the tip of the road, there should have been access into the area. So it's going to be like a loop.
That means, well, will the traffic go all the way in? Or will there be another turn in the middle of the road? Whether the ingress and egress will be here instead of having a cul-de-sac at the end like an appendix. You now say that that is the public road, but there may be a loop leading out again. What is the case? Mr. Lok, are you going to take this question? And Mr. Low, in relation to main entrance of an estate, is like what Mr. To said, it will be in the middle. But there is a turn at the end because it allows vehicles using the roundabout at the end to turn out again. And in between the entrance and the roundabout, we have provided 100-meter lay-by for buses and GMBs. And it can serve as a pick-up and drop-off point of passengers. And that section of the road at the end will be further extended to other areas in Tung Chung. But development is yet to reach that stage, and that's why this is the current design. Mr. Low, you wanted to say something? I'd like to respond to the issue about L16. In the Tung Chung New Town expansion study, we plan to extend this road to link with other new roads in the future development. So this is only temporary. Oh, that's a very clear answer. Oh, then that's good, because I don't like cul-de-sac because it will create a lot more problems. Well, there are no questions from other members. If that is the case, I will put it to a vote. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. None. So those who have voted support the proposal. The proposal is endorsed. Thank you. Next is another paper. It's Head 707, New Towns and Urban Area Development. PWSC bracket 2013 to 1432. It's about a 765 CL development of Anderson Road quarry site. Members are invited to upgrade part of the proposal to Category A at the cost of 187.2 million in money of the day prices. And this is in relation to forming the land for infrastructural work and to provide, and it's also to provide infrastructural work off-site road junction and pedestrian link facilities and also related site investigations. In the relevant paneled meeting, it was supported by members. You'll find the relevant information tabled. We have with us Under Secretary for Development, Mr. Eric Ma. I think this is the first appearance of Mr. Ma in the PWSC meeting. Welcome. Principal Assistant Secretary for Development, Planning and Lands, Mr. Kevin Choi. Director of Civil Engineering and Development, Mr. Hon Chi Kang. Chief Engineer, New Territories East, of the CEDD, Mr. Stephen Lee. Chief Town Planner, Housing and Office Land Supply from the Planning Department, Mr. Eric Yu. Senior Town Planner, Housing and Office Land Supply, Planning Department, Mr. Ng Kim Wai. If you have any questions, please press the button. So far, there are 7 members who would like to ask questions. Well, now 8. Question and answer 4 minutes. Please be precise so that government officials will have time to answer. First, Mr. Chen Kam Lam. Thank you. We support the project. In a discussion at the district council level, councillors found that supporting traffic arrangements and potential impact have yet to be elaborated or explained by the administration. Councillors made it clear in the meeting that if there was no satisfactory traffic supporting facilities and arrangements, then they will object to the project. Paragraphs 8, 13 and 16. According to the administration, they just glossed over it. They say that the increase in population as a result of the project will not pose a significant impact on traffic. I think this is too perfunctory and careless. You say that you would do studies, and I'd like to know what studies they are and when will the results be available. If this project is to go ahead, we're talking about 6 to 7 years. Apart from the Anderson Road project, next to it there are 2 other projects that is in progress. It's been building up to 4th or 5th story. And this will pose significant pressure in the Kwun Tong traffic. If you're just so light-hearted about it, I think the impact will be unimaginable. In Choi Hong, Kwun Tong, you see that traffic is heavy, and some of the road conditions are beyond repair. And now you don't want to do anything, so we're very worried. So when it comes to traffic, Mr. Hon, I thank the member for the question. Perhaps the paper is not clear enough, and I will explain. When it comes to new development area, we are talking about 2022 or 2023 when intake starts. We've done a feasibility study. We spent a year on it. Traffic is one of the important areas. From the study, we see that given the layout, traffic will use the South Po Yap Road, Lin Tak Road to go northward, and that will take about 70% of the traffic. The remaining 30% will go north via Clearwater Bay Road. The 70% at the south, 2/3 of which will go via Tseung Kwan O Road via the trunk road to various districts. And that is the general layout. And in relation to the development project and other development projects, we have looked at the overall arrangements. We are aware that at several junctions we have to do some work. We understand that at certain locations that there may be some impact. In Kwun Tong, about 3% of the traffic will be diverted there. Can I have some more time? The 3% is the concern of Kwun Tong DC. They are afraid that there may be some impact from Hip Wo Street. And we explained that the URA is doing some work there that involves roads. Say, for example, Matwa Street, at the roundabout, there will be a road dedicated eastward to Yau Tong. And the administration is also looking at the Trunk Road 6, the Route 6, Tin Yi Road, Tseung Kwan O Lam Tin Tunnel. Work is being done. The parallel roads, say Clearwater Bay Road, Tseung Kwan O Road, that is parallel to Route 6, are also being looked into. So our finding is that the impact for Kwun Tong is minimal. Clearwater Bay Road, especially the area near the MTR station, near the GMB stops. The Transport Department is looking into possible traffic arrangements to regulate traffic there. Well, we're all very concerned about traffic. That's why I allow more time for the director to answer questions. Next, Dr. Fernando Zheng. Thank you. Our prime concern is the ratio 8:2 between private and public housing. There is an urgency to have more public housing, but currently the ratio is only 2, whereas private is 8. So they are only HOS flats and not PRH units. Because of the high topography of the site, it will be difficult for wheelchair users to access the site. What about accessibility? And I see that at certain locations there are some escalator systems and also lift shaft, and they will not be wheelchair friendly. So I would like to know what locations are the escalator system and the lift shafts are going to be, or lift towers are going to be. Say, for example, the way leading to Shunli Estate or Kwun Tong, how can one go from this site to those areas? And in relation to infrastructure, we're talking about 100 million or so this time. When it comes to site formation, diversion, and road construction, the cost will be huge. So in relation to this part of the Anderson Road project, I'd like to get some information, because we will take that into consideration when working out the overall project cost. About private-public housing ratio, barrier-free access, and the overall cost of the project. Mr. Hon first. We have we proposed a number of access for pedestrian use leading to the Anderson Road Quarry site. We are looking into the alignment. We try to link up Anderson Road development to Kwun Tong MTR and the proposed Tseung Kwan O PTI. The grade difference can be quite high. Some of them are over 80 meters, and we will use lift towers or escalators. They amount to 20 to 30 of them. We have yet to embark on the detailed design. We are trying to get funding to do it. The principle is that wherever feasible, we will have barrier-free access, and that is for the next stage. But this is our principle. In relation to project cost, we don't have an accurate figure because we are waiting for the detailed design. The four linkage systems are quite large scale, serving over 100,000 people.
Chairman, I hope that in their design, all right, you haven't finalized all the details. Well, in overseas countries, whenever there are projects, there would be experts looking at barrier-free access, but then in Hong Kong, we don't seem to have that. But then, given that this is a massive plan, all right, this is just one of them because there are other parts along Anderson Road. I hope that you would be looking at this from this perspective by engaging experts to help you so that you would be looking at the project from the perspective of providing barrier-free access to those in need. All right, with regard to the ratio between public and private housing, can you quickly respond to that? All right, in the proposed development, the ratio between public and private housing is 80-20. And for public housing, basically, is subsidized housing. And then in coming up with this ratio, the main consideration was that, well, we have to look at this district is in Sau Mau Ping, and this is mainly a predominantly public housing estate, for example, Po Tat Estate and another estate. And what is under construction under the Anderson Road development plan, basically, we also have 18,000 public housing units. So we hope that through this proposed development project, we will be able to balance the composition of public-private housing in the area. That's why we propose that for private and subsidized housing, the ratio should be set at 80-20. In fact, we have already done 2 rounds of public consultation on this, and we have already been to the Kwun Tong District Council and the Sai Kung District Council, and they generally supported this proposed ratio. And I'd like to add one point, that is, even if we accept this proposed ratio 80-20 between public and private housing, in Sau Mau Ping, the future development is that when it comes to the ratio between public and private housing, it's still 16-84, and predominantly we have subsidized housing in the area. Next, Madam Chan Yun Han. Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure everybody in Kwun Tong is concerned about this, including those from the District Council. And as another member said, they are mainly concerned about traffic and transport, and that has not been dealt with. And the other day, we had the Deputy Secretary from the Development Bureau, and because of traffic arrangements in the development area, the plot ratio is quite high because it's on the top of the hill. And if I remember it correctly, we hope that there can be a quarry park, which would be very nice. But then, given the current situation is highly congested, and at the last meeting, I already repeatedly talked about this. Well, if you have to come back from Hilltop all the way to Clearwater Bay Road and also to the PTS, well, it will take you some 30-45 minutes according to some members, and the explanation is that with more people moving in, they will have to make use of the Route 6, but then they will be able to increase the flow by some 10%, but then they have not been able to resolve the traffic problems. I'd like to emphasize that, in fact, some officials have also approached us trying to explain the situation, and I've told them that, well, in the project, we have a traffic congestion in the course of the construction, but then in the future, there are other problems. And therefore, if you do not work on that, then it will be difficult for us to support you, because if you look at the current situation, you will have to identify site for housing development. But then what about traffic? And according to the residents, it's going to be disastrous if we approve this project. That's why when we discussed with the administration gave some undertakings. I don't know what the Deputy Secretary is going to tell us. Basically, what they think is, well, to deal with the current traffic flow problem, they will have to ensure that for the PTS, you will have to rebuild or redevelop Choi Hong Estate. And therefore, if you do not take the opportunity of this major development, then with regard to traffic congestion that many residents are concerned about, you're not going to resolve it if you don't take the opportunity to resolve them now. So in your planning, as you have not been able to give us all the details, then you'll be having more difficulties as you go on. And therefore, for the undertakings that have been given by the administration to us, all right, if you're able to build a quarry park on the top of the hill, and also at the PTS, the public transport or the PTI, you will have to give us more details. And I've already told the district councillors, and they are rather concerned if it's true. And they are saying that, all right, Madam Chan, you should not be supporting them without all those details. Administration, well, on the issue of the quarry park, well, this funding is about the detailed design and also site investigation. It does not include the design of the quarry park. But then we do expect that in the future, for the quarry park, is going to be managed and run by the LCSD, and they have yet to start the detailed design, but then the LCSD will be consulting the District Council on the design of the quarry park. And it's expected that quarry will be the theme of this park, and they will try to incorporate design concepts that have to do with quarries. So we expect that the quarry park idea will be implemented. Yes. All right. It's about site investigation and infrastructure. Chairman, if you ask the District Council whether or not you're going to have the quarry park and then with an increase in plot ratio, because the administration has difficulty in identifying site for housing development. So why can't you increase the plot ratio? So number one, you will have to resolve the traffic problem so that Choi Hong Estate can be redeveloped, and then you'll be able to buy us in, instead of just telling us that you're going to have the quarry park, but then residents will say no to it because there is already serious traffic congestion. And if you are not able to resolve them now, well, of course, I'm happy to hear what he said just now, but then procedurally, you will have to resolve the current traffic congestion problem, because this is very precious land and there is very little development. So you will have to think about this. You will have to resolve the problem of traffic congestion so that this piece of precious land can have a higher plot ratio, and then you can build the quarry park at the same time. So you will have to set the priorities and you will have to get things right. I think he will have to make public his undertaking. I think time's up. All right, I'll queue up again. All right, do you want to respond to that? Yes, Mr. Ma, the Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Madam Chan. All right, I think Ms. Chan is most concerned about the Choi Hong Road roundabout or interchange, because there is traffic congestion. We have already come up with some measures, and we have already submitted those to the District Council to discuss them, and we'll be implementing them as soon as possible in order to resolve the problem of traffic congestion at the Choi Hong Road interchange. In the medium to long term, well, after the completion of Route 6, there will be diversion of some of the parallel traffic from Kwun Tong Road and Clearwater Bay Road, so that they will be going to or diverted to Route 6. In the long run, we understand that, well, you are concerned about the traffic congestion and Choi Hong interchange. We will be looking into possible improvement works, for example, the tunneling and also the flyover and so on. But then all these will involve the resumption of some land in Choi Hong Estate, and we will conduct studies to ensure that these improvement works will be effective before we can carry that out along Choi Hong Road. With regard to the development of Choi Hong Estate, we understand that Choi Hong Estate has a long history, and the tenants do have certain aspirations, so we'll be responding to their aspirations, and the housing department will also take this into account. We will have to consider the age and also the safety and and everything else. So we'll be coordinating closely with them. Mr. Ip Kwok Him, Chairman, we support this project, but then as many members have said, they are concerned about traffic. This is really the difficulty or the core of the matter. So in taking this matter forward, we will have to bear this in mind, because if you're not able to resolve traffic problems, there are bound to be a lot of complaints and dissatisfaction if you have to take 30-45 minutes before you can go out of the area, then is a big problem. And of course, we're also concerned about the ratio between public and private housing. All right, the ratio of 8:2 between private and public housing or subsidized housing. I agree with that ratio, because if you look at this area, well, in Sao Mau Ping, predominantly we have public housing development, and therefore to introduce some private housing into the area is something that is good. But then when you look at the consultancy fee, we hope that the administration can help us with that, because you're proposing that this project involves different disciplines, and because of a lack of resources internally, you have to engage this consultant to do the job, and it's going to cost you some $83 million. This is a massive sum. And of course, you then went on to say that in Annex 2 or Enclosure 2, you have the details. But then I've also studied that. But then I'm no expert and technocrat, and therefore I have difficulty understanding that. So can you justify why you have to spend so much on the consultancy study? Well, for government officials and internally, why are you not able to do that yourselves? All right, Mr. Hon. Thank you, Chairman. Well, engaging consultants is a necessity if we do not want to have an inflated government establishment. We want to have consultants who would be doing this for us on need basis, instead of expanding our establishment in order to do this. And as I've explained earlier, this project involves a number of smaller projects, and we will have to carry out an EIA. And as I explained earlier, we are also looking at 4 proposed PTI and also MTR station, all the way up to Anderson Road Development Project. So there'll be 4 road projects, and there is a level difference of some 80 meters. And it would also involve the construction of pedestrian linkage system, escalators, and so on. So other than conducting the EIA, we also have to do some site investigation. So we will have to look into this more carefully as to which alignment is better and what the design should be like. And of course, within the quarry bay or within the quarry area, there are also works involving environmental impact assessment and so on. So a lot of works are involved here. Well, yes, this is just a budget, but then after this is approved, we will be doing this by way of tendering, so that there would be competitive bidding, and then we will decide on the ultimate cost. So this is our best estimate right now. Yes, on this particular point, I'd like to know, given the current project, how many government staff will be involved? Because you're talking about some $80 million for the consultancy study. We also have government officials involved in the project, right? How many? Yes, we also have staff monitoring the progress of this project, and we would also be looking at the consultancy study and the advice from the consultant to see if it's reasonable and viable. So we also have engineers and senior engineers who will be responsible for monitoring this. Yes, Alan Lau. Thank you, Chairman. Well, Chairman, when this was discussed at the development panel meeting, members and the administration had a very heated debate on this. And the focus of the debate was that the administration felt that all they needed to do was to deal with the Anderson Road project, and the additional traffic that might be generated, so long as they were able to deal with that, is okay. But then members felt otherwise, because for an energetic and visionary and government with commitment, it should have been able to take the opportunity to deal with what Mr. Ma just referred to, that is the Choi Hong Interchange, Clearwater Bay Road. Along those areas, we already have serious congestion problems. And I would have thought that after the discussion at the development panel meeting, when they come to the PWSC today, they would have been able to come up with some further justifications. Apparently, that's not found.
It was only until Mr. Ma, the Undersecretary, said that we realized it was actually dealt with in the development panel. But how come it is silent in the paper? That is, in relation to what Mr. Ma said. And it seems that it's a last-minute explanation that there was a discussion. And according to Mr. Ma, there will be land taken from the redevelopment of Choi Hong Estate to make space for traffic to turn around. And where is it included? In which project? And what is the detailed study? What departments are involved? Can you give me more information? And I'd also like to get a confirmation from Mr. Ma that he will give his speech or his speaking record to the Finance Committee. I'd like to remind members that this is in relation to site formation and associated infrastructure works. You may say that overall traffic improvement works may be related, but if you want detailed future traffic improvement projects, well, it may not be the right platform, and I think this should be discussed in the relevant panel. We're all very concerned about this, and yes, we would like to have a discussion, but in the right meeting. Paragraph 16 of the paper set out the traffic arrangements. Please understand that the Choi Hong interchange is a district traffic issue, and we've been liaising with the Transport and Housing Bureau, and that's why you see here that the Transport Department is conducting feasibility study. When it comes to large-scale projects, we will need land. We'll liaise with the THB about the redevelopment of Choi Hong Estate to see if we can find some land to conduct the traffic improvement works. Mr. Ma, the Undersecretary, said that he had no difficulty to deal with the questions. I don't think that, Chairman, is for you to say that they should not be discussed in this meeting. And Mr. Ma, well, I'd like to know, where does it say in paragraph 16 what you said? You just generally said that you will deal with the traffic problem. Where does it say that Choi Hong Estate is involved? Where does it say that you will have the vision and the determination to resolve traffic problems here? Mr. Ma? Well, the paper is about the development of the of the Anderson Road quarry site, and this will be followed up by the THB, and this will also be my request. That means, Mr. Ma and the Secretary, you will do that too, right? Mr. Ma, please reply. Well, I think I have already replied. We will go back and study your request. If you don't do it, it means that you have said it and you think you have done it. And this is the major accusation we have against the CY Leung government. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. When it comes to the site investigation and design work of the Anderson Road quarry site, I don't think we have objections. But we're talking about plot ratios that can be used? Can you tell me? Will the transport planning or traffic planning take up everything? CY said in his policy address a number of times, or maybe through the mouth of the Secretary for Development, that the plot ratio may be adjusted to increase housing supply. Would it be in conflict with the restrictions in this project? And as a result, this site cannot utilize its full potential. Mr. Chan, the Deputy Secretary. Well, we have previously answered this question on another platform. Yes, a traffic restriction is a constraint for this site, and we have said in the panel meeting that the design of the project will aim at preserving the ridge line of Tai Shang Tok, that is the hill at the site. It's a prominent location, whichever angle you look from. So you can say that we have fully utilized the height and the capacity of infrastructure. The member mentioned about plot ratio in different areas and the policy to adjust them upwards. This is not in conflict. For each site, as we've said, we have to look at the actual condition, say for example infrastructure, capacity, ventilation, etc. We mentioned that projects that have already gone ahead, and we will not adjust the plot ratio because we will have to do a lot more work and cause a delay. So for this project, we will not introduce the increase of 20%, but we will make full use of all land resources. Because of traffic capacity consideration, will you take into consideration the increase of toll fees at Cross Harbour Tunnel and the reduction of toll fees at the Eastern Tunnel and the additional traffic generated as a result? I believe that the increase and reduction of toll fees have yet to be implemented, so we have not taken that into consideration. Mr. Tony Jie. When we had a discussion at the panel meeting, we're all very concerned about traffic and whether the land could be put to optimum use. If you look at a single project, very often we hear from the administration that they will make sure adverse impact will not be aggravated. But what we see is that traffic is already very bad. If you don't make use of the opportunity posed by the quarry site, we're talking about a huge site on dozens of hectares. If you look at the project alone, it seems that the problem has been resolved. I'd like the Development Bureau to take into consideration the size of the site. You may introduce medium and long-term measures. can the Development Bureau undertake that they will continue to aim at solving traffic problems, instead of thinking that, well, they have solved the immediate problem and solve the problem of traffic volume and just leave it at that? I don't think that is acceptable to anyone. The Quarry Park, as a member said, that you very often, when it comes to development, put yourself in a box you have created. You don't make use of the district characteristics, and you ignore the opportunity to maximize the opportunity. You have a blinkered vision, and that is very often the case for a lot of projects. Yes, this is a public works project, but if it is a major project, it will affect the whole of Hong Kong. You should take the whole picture into account. So will the Development Bureau give an undertaking that this will not be treated as a stand-alone project? They will think further ahead in time. When it comes to a project, it takes years, so you have time to do more. Well, if it's 3 to 5 years, then that 3 or 5 years down the line, if there are inadequacies, then we can put in place some improvement measures. So would they consider thinking about the big picture to improve the traffic for the general area, not the specific site? Well, we have heard a lot on this issue. I think that if you ask the administration to give you a detailed report about traffic improvement, may be impossible. Well, who is to take this question? Please give me some more time to tell you what we think. Yes, this project, on the face of it, seems to be a standalone project, but we do not treat it as one. Especially when it comes to traffic, we look at the entire district. As I've said, we've spent 1 hour to conduct a preliminary study to look at traffic flow, and we've used mathematical models to conduct analysis. And when it comes to the traffic, 70% of the traffic will use the South Po Yap Road, Lin Tak Road, Sam Mau Ping Road to go to Tseung Kwan O Road, and use the trunk roads to various districts. 30% will use northwest direction to Clearwater Bay Road. As we've said, we are planning for pedestrian linkage system, and we have not calculated how it will help traffic in a mathematical model, but it will help Sam Mau Ping Estate, Choi Ping Estate, about 100,000 people. That will be the population served. We believe that this will not just help the Quarry project. It will also help pedestrians going to the NTR station and the PTI. So we look at the entire district, not just the project. And there is also the roundabout near Choi Hong that is at the Clearwater Bay Road. Over at the GMB stop, very often we have a long queue of minibuses waiting to pull in. The Transport Department made a proposal and is now being discussed with the District Council. And if this is to go ahead, it will be of great help. And in relation to Route 6, we have reached a stage when things are more concrete than before. Once it's commissioned, it will be of great help to the parallel road. Thank you.
Albert Chen. Thank you, Chairman. Well, for any development projects like this, the local traffic will inevitably be affected. That's why every time After such developments have taken place, the administration will take remedial measures to help it. It's not just here in Tuen Mun and Yuen Long, and also in Kwai Chung, we have had similar situations. We hope that on this occasion, with regard to the overall traffic infrastructure planning, there can be some improvement through this project and also through the Kai Tak development project. The local traffic network can be improved as well. On this particular project, at the development panel meeting, I've already raised this. I've been saying this many times. That is, we hope that with the change in zoning for the quarry here, the administration should seize the opportunity to positively develop some special projects. Making reference to the Eden Convoy project in the UK, you should borrow the idea. Well, you don't always have such opportunities. So we have the Lemma Island here, and it's even more appropriate for the development of something like the Eden project in Cornwall. You can have a major theme park, and within that, you can have green education and features. You can also have some cultural and music performance venues and so on. So it's an integrated venue. It's not just going to boost the local community economy, but then as far as the local residents are concerned, there is also one more venue for them to go to, so that in terms of entertainment, cultural performances and so on, we do have a shortage of an outdoor performing venue, so that they can enjoy this outdoor performance. So borrowing from the experience of the Eton project in Cornwall, it has been a huge success. So with your hard work, I hope that the administration will consider this. Even if it's not feasible here, I think this location is better. Alright, if you look at the environment, the quarry in Lemma Island might be more suitable. But then if you look at the geographical location, the Anderson Road quarry might be somewhat better in terms of traffic convenience and so on, so that for participants, they might find it more accessible. So can the administration respond to this? Who would like to respond? Yes, Mr. Yuen. Yes, as I just said, for the quarry park, the LCSD will be responsible for implementing this. And the LCSD, in due course, will be consulting the District Council for its views. Initially, we have already sought the advice from the LCSD, and they told us that they would be using quarry as a theme for the park. But then for the detailed design, they haven't started yet. But then I'm sure they'll take on board your suggestion, Mr. Chen. I hope that we can go beyond the jurisdiction of the LCSD, because many of these do not come under the purview of the LCSD. It can be like another ocean park or Disneyland theme park and so on. And even if you ask the ocean park to take over, I don't mind. I just think that you will have to think out of the box. You should not just confine it to a government department study. Well, I'm sure Mr. Alan Seaman would be more than happy to take this up. Because if you just confine it to government departments, then it's going to be very straitjacket, and there will be no new thinking or novel idea whatsoever. I hope that you can be more positive next time when you come again. Ms. Sito, I'd like to comment on two aspects, and the officials might not need to respond. So, number one, on housing, with regard to the 80-20 ratio between private and public housing, I'm not going to vote in favor of that, because even though you say that in that district there are already a lot of public housing, and therefore you need to have some private housing in order to achieve a better balance, but then you will have to tell us, well, for the private housing, how large are the units going to be? Will you be limiting the size of the units? Because even if you have 100% private housing, nobody can afford it. Nobody can buy those units. So we've repeatedly said this. All right, you will have to come up with public rental housing which are like HOS quality. Because after the announcement of the policy address, the small middle class have been complaining about this, because if you're not qualified for HOS, but then if you're not able to afford private housing, you will have a big problem. So you say that for 80% private housing, why can't you turn it into PRH? Then of course, to force you to do this, because you are a big elephant, and sometimes it's very difficult for you to take such a step. Still, we will have to do it. And you said that 70% of the vehicles will be using Po Yap Road and 30% would be using Clearwater Bay Road. But then we don't want the 80% of the private housing tenants to use those roads, because, well, other than those roads, sometimes it's difficult to connect yourselves with the other roads. And if you take public transport, if you do not drive yourself, then you will have to come down to the Kwun Tong MTR station or the Choi Hong MTR station. And if you go along Po Yap Road, you will have to go to Kwun Tong MTR station. How long does it take for you to reach the MTR station? And also for those along Clearwater Bay Road, they will have to go to Choi Hong. How long does it take? So for the connecting traffic, you will have to make sure that it's properly done. And just now the Deputy Secretary said that, all right, we might have to work on the Choi Hong estate too, if you want to go big. But then with the new development area, if you require the residents to connect themselves to MTR station, they might not necessarily have to go to Choi Hong. So I hope that the administration will do this before going to the FC. Please, for the connecting traffic, what plans you may have, please do let us know too. Or else after they have moved in, well, if it takes 45 minutes before they can reach the MTR station, then for the everyday traffic, it's going to be really very, very bad. So I understand that there isn't much time left, so please try the best to answer. Yes? Well, on Ms. Ho's question, I'd like to take some time to explain. I don't want to encourage residents to go in private transport. So there'll be public transport. There'll be public transport interchange. So that's the design. But then most of the traffic would be going on the southeast direction, and they would not be using Kwun Tong Road. Well, according to our design, they would be going all the way down to Lam Tin Station. That would be faster. But then for the details, we're still working with the Transport Department, and we'll be doing that at the next stage. So it doesn't mean that all the vehicles will be going down to Kwun Tong Road. In fact, only some 30% would be coming down via that route to Kwun Tong. In fact, the number would be very limited. We do have some figures here. About 80 per hour would be going to Kwun Tong, and the number of vehicles or trips would be very limited. So they would be mainly going to Lam Tin Station. And we are also planning that at the toll plaza, there will be an interchange at Kwun Tong, so that residents will find it convenient to do the interchange there. Yes, Ms. Emily Lau. Chairman, after I've heard it for such a long time, I'm still not sure about the traffic problems here. So does the administration admit that there are problems in Para 16, and the Deputy Secretary also referred us to that, and it specifically said that there are no problems with Route 6 and everything, and you also talk about many other things which have nothing to do with the Anderson Road quarry. So will that be happening or what? So are you suggesting that there are no problems to be resolved, and that's the situation? Please come clean on that. And also with regard to the duration of the project, Para 7 says that, all right, you only plan to start works in 2016, and then there will be different stages from 2019 to 2020, and then the site formation will be completing, and then by 2022, 2023, you are going to start the initial population intake. So it will take 9 years or 10 years. How come it will take so long? How come it's going to take that long? Is it that the projects are very complicated, or is it you're short of manpower? If we want you to resolve the problems urgently, then it's really going to be a big mess. Who's going to answer the question? Mr. Choi Kit Ming. Thank you, Ms. Lau, for your question. First, on the transport or traffic problem in Para 16, actually what we were trying to do is to give you a clear picture about the ARQ. and the traffic volume that might be generated from the development of the ARQ, we do have a complete package of measures to resolve it though. As our colleague just said, actually we do have a comprehensive package to resolve those problems. But then we also understand that from in Sao Mau Ping and Kwun Tong, if you look at the overall and regional traffic situation, yes, there is a demand to help relieve the traffic congestion right now. That's why for the short, medium to long term improvement measures, we'll be prepared to think about them, and we'll be prepared to take up that with the Housing and Transport Bureau so that we can come up with more long-term measures. We're more than happy to do that. But of course, we will have to look at the actual situations on the ground, whether or not all these are feasible and so on. We will need more time to discuss and sort that out internally. With regard to the duration of this project and whether or not it will take a bit too long for that, indeed the ARQ is a rather big project, and to reform or restore the ARQ, well, even in overseas, is a rather complicated project that will take a bit longer. So it's about the restoration of it. Well, we are now in the detailed design stage, and that would also include conducting an EIA, and then we will move on to the tendering exercise, as we just explained. Well, in terms of the restoration or rehabilitation of the ARQ, well, and there are also some interchanges and junctions and so on, there would also have to be some traffic diversion programs and schemes, and we would also like to have 4 pedestrian linkages going uphill, going downhill. We have to have some lifts and escalator systems and so on, and some of these slopes are rather steep and so on. So this is our initial estimate. With regard to the rehabilitation scheme, I would not underestimate the difficulty, because it will be passing through many housing estates and so on, and therefore in the design in the detailed design stage, we will be looking at the timeline and decide if it's appropriate. Well, Chairman, on the traffic issue, apparently they are saying that there are no problems at all. And of course, when the district councillors say that there are problems, they say that they're going to look into that in detail. And therefore, in this project, apparently you're not going to give us any further details, because just now you said that it would take quite a long time. Is that the case? So you're assuming that for the areas that are regarded as problematic by the district councillors and residents, you said that there would be no impact whatsoever, but then you'll be going to look into it in the next few years, but then that will take a few years before you come back again. Is that the case? Well, with regard to the overall improvement of the traffic in the district, well, according to your schedule, so what's the timeline going to be like? Can you give us more details so that for the roads, junction improvements and overall traffic problems, if you do not have a clear picture on how they are going to be resolved, that might affect members' inclination to support your proposal. I understand that you have given us some details about the project itself, but then what about the overall traffic improvement? But then we are not supposed to take up the role of the transport panel and so on with regard to the overall development and so on. The relevant panel, the transport panel, the development panel, will definitely be monitoring that closely. But then given the concern expressed by members today, is the administration able to give us more details? For example, a rough timetable as to what's going to be done at what time? Yes, Chairman, as Ms. Lau just said, well, for the traffic flow generated by this project, we will be able to cope with that. But then in the longer term, and also the overall regional traffic condition and situation, will be going back to the relevant panel. The administration is willing to go back to the panel to give you a more detailed briefing. Well, that's the way you think about it. But then if the analysis is somewhat different, well, they are saying that the overall traffic condition will be affected, and of course that has to do with the design of this project. But then apparently you're saying that, well, never mind that, we will go ahead with this first. I don't know how this is going to be like in the future. Well, as Mr. Hon just said, for the pedestrian linkage systems, indeed that would provide some concrete help to ease the flow in the area. It's not just about the ARQ. It's going to help the 100,000 people living in Sao Mau Ping so that they would find it more accessible to the MTR station. But then for the longer term measures, I'm afraid we really have to go back to the panel, and then we'll give the details at the panel.
I'd like to get some clarification. It's not the case that you will conduct the studies simply because we asked today. If that is the case, we're very worried. If you say that, yes, it's already on your agenda, and this will help the overall traffic condition. You mentioned about the pedestrian linkage, 20 to 30 lifts and escalators. Of course, that itself is an improvement. In relation to the overall traffic arrangement, if you have already in mind a timeline when you will be reverting to the panel, I think you can tell us, and this will give some peace of mind to members. But it's not, we liaise not just about this project with the Kwun Tong District Council on other issues as well. Traffic is not the only concern. It's not the concern of just the Kwun Tong District Council, but the LegCo as well. Of course, we'll revert to the panel, and when it comes to the time, we will have to liaise with the clerk of the panel. I'd like to reiterate that the traffic brought by ARQ has been subject to a lot of studies. And it's only then that we draw the conclusion that we will be able to tackle the traffic volume. And that's why we propose this project. And we hope to get the resources to conduct studies so that we can implement some short-term measures, including pedestrian linkage, to serve the residents. Next. In the first round, Mr. Frankie Yik. He's the only one, and then for the second round, Miss Chen Yun Han. Mr. Yik. Thank you. Members are very concerned about the overall traffic condition. I'm not going to ask question about that. The right bottom hand corner of enclosure 1. The proposed junction improvement at Lin Tak Road, Sao Mau Ping Road, and bus interchange at Tseung Kwan O Tunnel Toll Plaza, and that was something we put forward in 2010. It's not a timetable when it will be implemented. You talk about the overall traffic study near Choi Hung Estate. Will this be given priority? Because if it is done earlier, this will be beneficial to residents in Lam Tin and Tseung Kwan O. Who is to take this question? Mr. Lee? We fully understand there is demand from the district. Well, we will start the detailed design, which will be completed in 2016. And this will cover the road improvement in Lin Tak Road and Sao Mau Ping interchange. And that will, if we include that, we will have to do the EIA as well, and the completion will be pushed back to 2018. We hope that we will be able to complete the whole thing in 2 years' time. It seems that it's a long time. We will go back and see if we can separate it from the Lin Tak Road project, and to bring the completion forward. Once we've got the funding approval, we will carve it out for the studies so that it will be completed as soon as possible. Please do it as soon as possible and go back and revert to the district council. Who else in the first round? Ms. Chen Yun Han, 3 minutes, question and answer. Thank you. I don't rule out the need that it can be discussed in the panel meeting. If the administration does not take into account our overall demand, that will not do. I remember about 9 months ago, I was talking to district councillors and the government about this. I spent a long time talking to the administration, but I'm disappointed with their answers. I've also spoken to the secretary for TH as well. I asked him to deal with the long-term traffic problems in the district. It's a problem, it's an old problem that plagued the district. But they only confine themselves to the development at Shan, the hill. I believe that I've been talking to them for over a year. We've been talking about the same problem and we see the same thing in paper. Yesterday when I was talking to Kwun Tong district councillors, I was told that they were only words. We're talking about Kwun Tong and Wong Tai Sin, the two affected areas. I've been waiting for too long. You have to take into account the whole picture. It's a major project, not just the ARQ. You have to identify the issues to be resolved. You should not just adopt a perfunctory attitude to just go through this committee, the FC, and the whole project. I first raised this a year ago, and I've said this many times. We need 4 things. Tell us on paper. Well, I think it would be best to have a interdepartmental team. The director has been talking about diverting traffic to the Eastern Tunnel. We're talking about 20,000 residents of the middle class. They have to go to Wong Tai Sin and then go round. You're burying your head in the sand. It's not that I don't respect your study, but the district members told me not to trust you. I don't object to you go back to the panel. But I have a counter proposal. You have to set out all the points in the finance committee. We don't even see it on paper, and you ask us to endorse it? Well, I don't want to object to it because it's a good project. We have redevelopment of Wharfway Estate. Why not Choi Hung Estate? Why not include this in the project? There is no cooperation between bureaus, and that's why we have this freakish project. I don't agree with your decision, Chairman, but yes, they can revert to the panel. I've been a legislator for many years, and this should not be the way. I ask for an undertaking from the administration that it should be put on paper to the FC. I've spoken to Mr. Singh of the Development Bureau. Well, whoever is to take the lead, the Development Bureau can talk to the THB. I really want to support it. But if they cannot set the issues on paper, I find it very difficult to support it. Any reply on this issue? Ms. Chan, I'd like to explain that you may see it as a decision, but I'm not in a position to make any decisions. Listen to me. Give me time to finish. This project is the ARQ, a part of it, about site formation and the relevant infrastructural works. And it involves some traffic improvement work at junctions and roads leading out of the site. and some detailed design of pedestrian linkage. That is a clear scope of the project. If you're concerned about the overall traffic condition of the entire district, yes, I'm very concerned as well. I may not live there now, but for a long time I lived in Ngau Tau Kok in Kwun Tong when I was young. You should not mix the traffic issue with the project. So this is not a decision or a ruling. This is only logic. Am I in a position to make a ruling? Well, we're not going to discuss that. At that time, they did not ask for 187 million. We're very concerned about the study. I believe that they will ask for a different sum when they actually come for funding approval. We have to be very clear about the scope of the proposal. Related problems are well discussed. I've given enough time for you to do that. You've made your comments. The administration has clarified that they did not consider this just because we raised the issue today. The redevelopment of Choi Hong Estate is already on the agenda, and they have not given us a clear date about when they will revert to the panel, but they have undertaken to do it. So this is not a ruling, Ms. Chan. I think this has been the practice of LegCo. I don't know whether it will go to FC or the 27th or the 29th. Just like what Mr. Allen Leung said. Where does it say? You only said that it was an undertaking. All right. If you say that, if you set everything out in the FC paper, then we at least have something on paper. If there are just empty words without anything on paper, I cannot explain to district councillors. Yes, it's the site on Shang Tok Shan. And you told us about the various studies. But you have to put everything on paper so that we at least have something on paper. I think that is the biggest difficulty of the administration. There is no cooperation among bureaus and departments. And a secretary for TH cannot make the director for housing to do things. Why can't you include a Choi Hong Estate? Choi Hong Estate is older than Wah Fu. And you talk about construction of private and subsidized housing. Your time is up, Ms. Chan. Well, there are no other members who would like to ask questions. I think we need to put this to a vote. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. No objection. I think members who have voted, the majority of which support this proposal. Proposal is endorsed. Well, your comments are recorded. Don't worry, Ms. Chan. Next, item 4, Head 711 Housing. PWSC 2013 to 14. 33 195SC Community Hall at Sao Ming Road, Kwun Tong. This document is to propose to upgrade the project to Cat A at an estimated cost of 134.9 million in money of the day prices for the construction of a new community hall at Sao Ming Road, Kwun Tong. And 3rd of June 2013, the administration consulted the panel on housing. members expressed support of the funding approval. On the 2nd of December 2013, administration provided additional information at the request of members. The salient points have been covered in the paper.
With us today are Mr. Kenneth Wong, Chief Civil Engineer from the T&H Bureau, Mr. Leung Kun Ki, Director of Architectural Services, Mrs. Alice Yu, Project Director from the ASD, and Mr. Eric Hui, Assistant Director from the HAD, and Mr. Ken Chung, Chief Architect from the Housing Department, and Ms. Carmen Yu, Assistant District Officer from the Home Affairs Department. All right. Members who would like to ask questions, please raise your hands. We have two. Dr. Fernando Chung. This item has been raised a number of times. We have been asking that for a 6-story building there, and there are several NGOs providing community services, and it's going to be turned into a 2-story building with a community hall. Yes, we support that we should expand the community hall. But then if you look at the project, we are talking about a shortage of land for the provision of social services or welfare services. I think you're running counter to that direction. As the Chief Executive said in the policy address, when it comes to land for the NGOs, the administration is now striving to cooperate with them so that there can be redevelopment of certain sites in order to have more floor space for them to work on. So whether or not you're talking about day centers or residential care services for the disabled and for the elderly, the queues are very, very long. And on this occasion, the project would affect several NGOs. They are providing youth services, family and children services, employment training, and so on. They will have to be relocated elsewhere. And I've already been discussing with the administration and the NGOs concerned. Yes, there are some temporary arrangement, but that is not going to be seamless. For an interim, during the interim, some NGOs might not have a place to work in, and in some cases, as the space is managed by the HAD, that's why it has not taken into account of the needs of the welfare agencies, and as a result, there is no temporary space available. And also, how about the plot ratio? Have you been able to maximize the plot ratio? If not, then why have you taken into account that factor? Why have you not taken the opportunity to increase the floor space for the provision of welfare services? Who would like to answer the question about the plot ratio, whether or not it can be increased and so on? Well, Chairman, thank you. Yes. Concerning the plot ratio for the integrated use is 4.5 and 1.5 respectively. For the building height, it should be 150 PhD. As the entire site is relatively small and is also affected by the slope, is surrounded by the bus terminus and the slope and so on, and also the visual impact and also ventilation, all these will have to be taken into account. As comprehensive development, there is no room for further development, and also because of the site constraint, because the site is relatively small, we have to provide some 320 public housing units on the site, and for the building height, we have already built up to the maximum height, and there is no further room for upward adjustment. And if you look at the actual number of housing site is 1.25, and therefore for the main development constraints, because of there are some site constraints, and if you look at the community hall and its design is right next to the PRH block, and there is no room for horizontal expansion, there is no way that we can increase the amount of floor space for welfare services or facilities. And in the land lease, it also says that the window must not be blocked by the community hall, and therefore we cannot increase the number of stories of the community hall in order to house more welfare facilities. But then we have promised that we have actually applied to the TPB to increase the development parameters in order to provide more facilities, and we can also provide more units in the PRH. But then because of the size of the site and also the orientation of the building is standing right in the middle of the ventilation or the breezeway, that's why it's not quite feasible. So if you try to change the orientation and layout, that would also mean a postponement of the completion date by at least 2 years. So that's the objective constraints of the site, and as a result, we have not been able to increase the plot ratio. So does it mean that you've already maximized the plot ratio? Yes, that's what I heard. Yes, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. Whether or not you have used up to the maximum plot ratio, I think is very clear in the paper. In terms of community facilities, you've only used up to 1.25, so that's the non-residential part. And then you have the 0.25 ratio that can be used. So our question is it really impossible for you to get more space for that? And also after this adjustment, if you look at Sao Mau Ping, Po Tat, near the community, or in and around that area, well, the social welfare services would be able to fill up some of the space that is in the area. So some of the agencies will have to be relocated. Will they be moving into Sao Mau Ping or Po Tat Estate? And can you also tell us, all right, in Sao Mau Ping, Po Tat and also Po Tat Estate, after this adjustment, how many welfare facilities are left, so that they'll be able to have more NGOs move in to provide the much needed social welfare services. On the redevelopment, all right, I'll take that part first. The SWD might wish to supplement on that. At present, if you look at the relocation arrangement, well, they'll be relocated in Sao Mau Ping Estate and also the ARQ PRH development project in the medium to long term. That has been agreed upon by the various government agencies, so that's been agreed. But Chairman, I'd like to know, after this adjustment in Sao Mau Ping and Po Tat Estate, because they are two adjoining communities, because, well, for Anderson Road Quarry is another major area. So I'm just looking at Po Tat and Sao Mau Ping. We might be talking about some 50,000 people or even more. So when it comes to welfare facilities, how much room is left? Who can answer this question? So how much more room is left? Does it mean that no further room is left? I'd just like to clarify that point, because within the community, we have an aging population is quite a serious problem, and there are also other demands and aspirations that have not been met. And also on top of that, some of the services in Sao Mau Ping will have to be relocated. Some will have to squeeze into the vacant units in Sao Mau Ping, and some would have to go to Anderson Road Quarry. So does it mean that in Sao Mau Ping and Po Tat Estates in the future, there will be no room for additional welfare facilities, even if they are able to provide that in the area? So is there any spare room available? We haven't got the information with us, but then as you are aware, the housing estates are already rather cramped, and therefore whatever can be used has been used. But then we'll try to go back and take a look. We'll try to collate the information and we'll give you more details. So for the time being, we haven't got that with us. Thank you. Chairman? Yes, I still have some time left. I'd just like to say that the housing department should work on it. It also shows that in recent years, in the design of your buildings, for the ground floor area, basically it's all closed. Well, in the old style housing estates, well, very often there would be a lot of room in the ground floor or a grade, so that there would be possibilities for further development, or where there is a need, there is always space available. So I hope that the housing department can consider incorporating more space in its design. All right, the point is very clear. Next, Ma Fong Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. My concerns are consistent with what Dr. Fernando Cheung just said, and the administration has already answered the question. With no spare room available, well, we will need more space. So my question is, and of course you would also you will have to take into account the economic value or otherwise. Well, for the GMB stop or the bus stop, can you make use of the space above? Because in some of the aging communities, well, sometimes you do have a shortage of space, and sometimes the facilities are not very accessible. So have you considered that? Is there any room for that maneuvering? Who is to answer the question? I think that has gone beyond the site and space available in the area. Chairman, actually, last time when we attended the panel meeting, we already gave some explanation. In fact, this is a very steep slope. That's why we don't want to have anything to do with the slope, because that might affect slope safety. That's why, for the time being, we have not considered relocating the bus stop, because it's on the slope, and there are already some piles being drilled into that. We don't want to affect the slope safety there. That's why, for the time being, we have not considered developing anything on top of the bus terminus or stop on the slope. Ma Fong Kwok, I know it's difficult, but then have you really thought about it? I'm not really concerned about safety, because it's the job of the engineers. And well, I used to live in a building, and it's also on a slope. So the thing is, have you considered that, and whether or not economically it's viable? I don't know if the officials are going to answer that question. I think Mr. Wu Chi-wai has also asked this. All right, in the future, where there is further needs, would they be able to identify more space for that? So if the administration is ready, then you can answer the question, or else you can go back and think about it. Yes, Mr. Zhang? All right, I can supplement one piece of information, because on this particular site, we talk about the bus stop. Well, back in the 70s, there was a very serious landslide, and as a result, the whole piece of land was stabilized. So, as Mr. Wong just said, well, the site foundation is rather difficult already. The site conditions are rather difficult already, and therefore we would not attempt to build anything more on that piece of land because of the site constraints. Mr. Albert Chan, thank you, Chairman. I think I've repeated that point many times over the years, and every time whenever there are projects involving community halls, I would bring that up. So it's about the lack of activity rooms in the community halls. Well, for those who have been doing this, they would know that sometimes over 100 NGOs would be fighting for a time slot for a particular location. So there is huge or fierce competition, and basically they have a community or assembly hall. Yes, that can be used for different purposes sometimes, but if you look at the community needs, if you can have a few more activity rooms, then the residents in the local community would be able to enrich their programs. But then every time when they come back again, they always come up with the same monotonous design. So I'd like to put this on record with regard to the incalcitrant attitude of the department. I'd like to express regret about this, because you have not been able to move up with time, because you will have to look at the design of the building and also the needs of a community. Well, for officials, apparently they are saying that take it or leave it, nothing will be done about it. So you will just continue to say what you want, and then they'll just keep on with what they've been doing. So how much more would that cost you with 2 or more activity rooms? And if you're not able to house that in 1 story, then how about 1.5 stories or 2 stories for that? So I wonder if this can be put on record. I'd like to condemn the HAB for this bureaucratic approach. It has totally ignored the needs of the local community. All right, you're just officials, you can be promoted, whatever you do. And yet you have totally ignored the needs of the community. And if a few more members can help to speak out, I hope that the Home Affairs Bureau will try to improve on that.
The undersize of the activity room. Assistant Director, Mr. Hui. In 2011, we had a meeting in the Home Affairs panel. We submitted a paper to the HA panel and the PWSC about the various designs. The old community hall had 1 hall, and in the newer designs, we incorporated a partition that is ceiling high in the hall, so that 2 groups can hold activities in the same hall at the same time. And in relation to multi-purpose room, in the past and in old community halls, there was no such facilities, or there was only 1. Now we have tripled the amount because we have enlarged the size of the conference room, and the room itself is ceiling high. There are partitions with separate axes so that the conference room can accommodate 2 groups to have activities at the same time. So it's a multi-purpose room now. For the Hong Hom, say for example for the Hong Hom community hall, we put in partitions so that this multi-purpose room can accommodate 3 groups. We take the actual situation into account. We have turned the conference room without a stage into a multi-purpose room for lease to groups. In 2012, we made a decision with the panel. We have tripled the space. Like the community hall in Hong Kong, we can turn the multi-purpose room into 3 separate rooms. Just 1 word. There are a lot of singing classes like Cantonese opera training classes. If you have just mobile partitions, it cannot insulate noise. I think if you have 2 or 3 rooms, fixed rooms, then it will make a difference with cost effectiveness. Next, Ms. Helena Wong. Is there any space under the buildings of the public housing estate next to the community hall? Is there space earmarked for RCHEs or welfare facilities? We see that the area has an aging population. We support family-friendly facilities. So we need space for RCHEs or elderly facilities on the ground floor of PRH buildings. We have self-study rooms, we have libraries, and they have a separate access from the community hall, and it's managed by the housing department, there is no space for RCHEs, and I think it has to be dealt with on a district level. When you make the choice to have a library over an RCHE, what were the considerations? In 2012, in 2010 and last year, 2013, we had discussions with the community. We identified the needs of the community. We discussed with the housing department before making arrangements. This is a small site, and it's too small for certain facilities, so we put them into use as libraries or self-study rooms. No other questions? Put this to a vote. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. No objections. I think those who have voted support the proposal. The proposal is endorsed. Now is 10:20. I think we can have the meeting till 10:45. And there is one item left on the agenda. Any questions? Please press the speak button. We may not have time for all comments. Should we leave it for the next meeting? There is a time slot. It's the 29th of January at 8:30. You may indicate whether you prefer to start the discussion now and continue it on the 29th. I have no problem when it comes to starting the discussion, but if we have another time slot, I hope that this meeting will finish at 10:30. What about 11:15? We need a little bit more time. Some members are here and they would like to ask questions today. 10:45. Ms. Ho, we'll do our best. Well, if a member claims a division, then we will have to wait for the bell to ring. I don't think we'll be able to put this to a vote today because we have 7 members who have indicated to speak. So we will need 28 minutes. We will not be able to put it to a vote. It will have to be continued on the 29th. Let me give you an opening remark. It is Head 703 buildings. PWSC number 2030 to 14, number 35. 183GK provisioning of Shanghai Street Refuse Collection Point and Street Sleeper Services Units to the site at Hao Chung Street, Yau Ma Tei for the Phase 2 development of the Yau Ma Tei Theatre project. This proposes to upgrade 183GK to Category A at an estimated cost of 165.3 million in money of the day prices for the reprovisioning of Shanghai Street Refuse Collection Point (RCP) and Street Sleeper Services Units (SSSU) to the site at Hao Chung Street, Yau Ma Tei, to vacate the original site for the Phase 2 development of the Yau Ma Tei Theatre project. On the 13th of December last year, the administration consulted the HAP. Members did not object to the proposal to have further discussions on this. You will find the relevant discussion in the paper. We have with us Mrs. Avia Lai Wong, Deputy Secretary of the Home Affairs Bureau, Ms. Wong Yut Hua, Principal Assistant Secretary, Culture, Home Affairs Bureau, Mr. Leung Kun Ki, Director of Architectural Services, Mrs. Alice Yu Ng, Project Director at ASD, Mr. Tung Chung, Assistant Director, Family and Child Welfare, Social Welfare Department. Mr. Fan Yu Kai, Assistant Director, Operations, Food and Environmental Hygiene Department. Mr. Winsome Chow, Assistant Director, Performing Arts, LCSD. There are 8 members who would like to ask questions. 4 minutes question and answer. This will take us to 10:45. Mr. Tony Zhe. Thank you. I want it on record that I am disappointed about this project. We're talking about sites of over 10,000 square feet. Land is precious. We have to put every site into good use. In relation to the proposed use, can we put in more uses to fully utilize the land? Last time I asked, the administration told us that there was a time constraint, but this has been in this discussion for a very long time, so there was no problem of time limitations. In my understanding of the main use, that is the RCP and the SSSU, my understanding is that the administration has done their best when it comes to design, but to some members, it still leaves room for desire. Can we separate the design? We can add other uses, say for example storage. By adding additional uses, this will reduce the conflicts of the different users. What is the utilization rate of the SSSU facilities at Shanghai Street? We're talking about 70 places. So what is the current utilization rate? And what is the number of places available now? How do you assess how much you need? First, putting the land to full use and the utilization of the street sleepers facility. Who is to take the question? The purpose of the project is to vacate the current site of Shanghai Street so that the Phase 2 development of the Yamate Theatre project can go ahead. When we were identifying sites and working on the superstructure design, we followed the established procedure and consulted the planning department and the government property agency. They confirmed that the utilization of the facility has reached its optimum. We try to separate the uses in design. After consulting the panel, we put in a lot of improvement measures to segregate the two facilities. Say, for example, we design the two entrances to be as far away from each other as possible. So the two facilities are completely segregated. The only thing they share is an emergency evacuation exit. The exit of the RCP is located as far away as possible from windows of the SSSU. We've also incorporated a lot of ameliorating measures. An entrance at the pedestrian an entrance of the pavement of the RCU is designed to be hidden. You will not be able to see the entrance at Haocheng Street. What about utilization? I will defer to the WSD. Thank you. Utilization rate of the SSU at Shanghai Street is about 90%. That is the average. It's a self-financing facility run by an NGO. The overall utilization rate is about 88% in 2012 and 2013. Next, Mr. Ma Fung Kwok. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Tony Jie, what did you say? I was asking about the number of places in the current facility. I have the number for the new one. What about the existing one? Also 70. Mr. Ma Fung Kwok. I strongly support the expansion of the Yamate Theatre facility, the reprovisioning of the RCP and the SSSU. In a panel meeting, a number of members, me included, were of the view that it's not desirable to have the two facilities placed together. They should be separated to reduce nuisance. One of the ways is to distance the two as much as possible. If it cannot be done horizontally, what about vertically?
I agree with the earlier suggestion, that is, we have to make the best use of the site. Initially, we talk about increasing the number of stories so that for the vertical distance that would be increased so that there would be more space to dilute the odor. But then subsequently we were told that that could not be done, and then we were told that you cannot block the sight line or the view of the buildings nearby. But then in this case it's not a problem. So is it that the plot ratio cannot be changed? In many areas you're talking about relaxing the plot ratio, but then in this case you do have a need to increase the distance between the two buildings. So should you have worked a bit harder on that by spending a bit more time? Administration, yes, on making the gap as wide as possible between the two buildings in order to avoid the odor from the RCV from affecting the SSHU. Well, we will be filtering the air from the RCV first. Well, at the RCV, we will have the state-of-the-art air filtering system in place, and then we will also be exhausting the odor at a height so that the location would also be farthest away from the SSSU, and also there would only be 6 or 7 trips to and from the RCV, and the gate would only be open when the vehicle enters or leaves the RCV, and at all times of the day the gate would be kept closed, and the staff there would also be thoroughly cleansing the area or the facility, and also before the close of day they would also be cleaning up the entire facility. I think all that has been included in the paper, and therefore there is no need for you to go into great lengths in giving us the details in the paper. Well, I think I'd just like to say that for the design of the state-of-the-art RCV, the situation is a lot more improved when compared to those along Shanghai Street. For the newly completed one, for example, on Patterson Street in Causeway Bay, in fact, there is no odor whatsoever. So you can also conduct a site visit to see for yourselves. So I was just trying to explain that to you. And secondly, about the addition of a story to the building, well, we've explained that at the panel meeting earlier. Well, for the stage 2 or phase 2 of the development of the Yamate Theatre project, there is an urgency to this, because since July 2012, after the completion of the Yamate Theatre, it has become a very important training ground for Cantonese opera performers. But then, because it's a historical building, well, if you look at the lobby and also the backstage, we have a shortage of space, and therefore there is an urgency for us to go ahead with the phase 2 of the project. I do not agree, because in designing the Yamate Theatre, you should have known that they needed these facilities and space, because I've already raised this 10 years ago. Why didn't you consider it? Why didn't you say that there was an urgency then? So this is not a main reason for that. And then for the RCV, the refuse collection vehicles going in and out of the refuse collection point. But then we are also talking about rubbish bins being pushed in and out of the RCP. So you will also have to take that into account. So I don't think you are able to justify what you said just now. All right, for the odor problem, I think members are all very concerned about this. Time's up. Fernando Chung. Thank you, Chairman. We are against this project. We believe that as a matter of principle, RCP and SSSU, that is a place for human habitation, should not be co-located. So we are not talking about a refuse collection point. We are talking about tons of refuse that has to be processed. So day in, day out, you have refuse transported in and out of the RCV, and there are also pesticide or pest experts who have been telling us that these are wet refuse, and that would have to be cleansed, and that would also cause problems. And actually, even amongst the speed sleepers, they already have this problem, and they should have taken the opportunity to resolve this problem. And yet the administration has been very incalcitrant, and they are still insisting on co-locating the SSSU alongside the RCP. In fact, let's not forget that for those who use the SSSU, we have male, females, and even children. And in some cases, because of the special circumstances of their parents, some children have to go into the SSSU for temporary shelter. How come we have to allow this to happen? That is the co-location of an SSSU alongside an RCP. This is a government, and yet it is telling us that it has difficulty identifying suitable location for this. If you agree with us that the two facilities should not be placed side by side this. Alright, for the urgency of the theatre and Cantonese Opera Center, we have been very supportive of that. We have never said that we would be against the expansion of the Yau Ma Tei Theatre or the Cantonese Opera Center. We would like to see that happen as soon as possible. But then if you're just trying to relocate this just for the purpose of completing that as soon as possible, this is going to be a disgrace for Hong Kong. So how come you are not able to agree that in principle these two facilities should not be located side by side, and you talk about air ventilation and the design and so on and so forth? If you're willing to move into the upper stories of this RCP, if you and your family are willing to move in, then I would be able to, or I would be prepared to support it too. Alright, points are very clear. Anyone who would like to respond? Alright, Mrs. Lam. Alright, in coming up with the reprovisioning arrangement, we have closely consulted the service units of the two SSSUs, and they also agree with our reprovisioning plan. This is nonsense, Chairman. For the operating costs of these SSSU, they need the support of the administration, so they are at your mercy, and therefore they have no say at all. Can I also say that right next to this, we have a highways department's storage. So does that mean that all those materials have to be stored there? So can the highways department give way? You have a lot of land everywhere. Why can't you identify another site for the construction of the SSSU? Can you make some adjustments? I'd also like to provide some accurate information about the sites, because for the two service units, in fact, none of them are under the subvention of the SWD. They are self-financing. And also initially when we started with the planning, we also attempted to identify two separate sites, but then we failed. That's why, in the end, after a lot of hard work, we've been able to identify this site. Thank you. Next, Helena Wong, and then we'll have to wrap up. And then we will have to adjourn. Well, Ms. Emily Lau, Wu Chi Wai, Sid Ho, Frankie Yik, and Chen Yun Han would like to speak, and they'll have to wait till the next meeting. Helena Wong. Well, the Democratic Party is strongly against the administration for its refusal to listen to our views. We don't want to co-locate SSSU with NRCP side by side. It's been a mistake for years. You've been treating street sleepers as refuse and rubbish. That's why they are both objectionable. That's why they are being placed side by side. We'd like to just remind you that you should not be treating street sleepers as refuse, and they should not be placed side by side in RCP. Whatever you do to orient the facilities within an RCP. Well, street sleepers are humans. I don't know. Well, for district councillors or political parties, I do not understand why they would find it acceptable. Are they also regarding street sleepers as inhumans? That's why they don't have to be treated nicely. Well, at the panel meeting, we already discussed this. But then when the administration comes back, they always say that there is no land available. All right, some members said that why don't you relocate the RCP to a new location, and then for the SSSU, it can be redeveloped in situ. As para 16 of the paper says, it can be incorporated into phase 2 of the Yau Ma Tei Theatre. You will have to identify space, whether or not you're going to build 1 or 2 additional stories so that you can have the 70 places available. But then what you've been doing is that you are only trying to co-locate the 2 facilities in the same location. So can you do it all over again? Because in any case, in para 5, you say that for phase 2 of Yau Ma Tei Theatre, sooner or later you will have to come back to us for a revised plan. And given the fact that this proposal has yet to be submitted to us, why don't you do the design of phase 2 of Yau Ma Tei Theatre again, so that you can find a space for the SSSU there before you submit that proposal to us again. And then for the relocation of the RCP, we'll be prepared to support that. We think the residents would be in support of that. But then you still have not been able to relocate the SSSU, and if you have not been able to do that, then you will have to consider whether or not it can be incorporated into phase 2 of the YMTT, because you've been telling us that YMTT needs more space. You will have to expand the backstage and side stage and so on. Alright, you have not got the plans ready. So why is it that the YMTT will have to be extended all the way up to the new location? And does it mean that there is no space whatsoever, even basement, for the purpose of relocating the SSSU? I grew up in Yau Ma Tei. I used to live near the RCP. So for many years, well, the RCP did cause some nuisance to the residents. But then for street sleepers, I don't think they've caused any nuisance to the residential developments nearby. They would not be causing disturbance to the residents nearby, because in the daytime, they also have to go out to work. So I don't think that would be a very obnoxious facility. And if members think that they are quite a nuisance to the community, in fact, that's stigmatization. In fact, they are needy people. They need help. They are not like beggars. They are not dressed very improperly, causing a lot of they are not really eyesore, or they are not really in tatters and so on. So you talk about segregation of the YMTT and so on. All right, this is a tourist. Is it a tourism attraction? Is it not going to be a Cantonese opera? So how much time would they be spending there? And they are just doing rehearsal and so on. Why can't they allow some street sleepers to be upstairs or downstairs? I hope that you're not going to put this to the vote right away. I hope that they can resubmit it and they can provide us with some fresh details. Okay, I think the points are very clear. We don't have time to deal with this item now. That's why, as I just said, we'll be deferring this to the next meeting. So that would be on the 29th of January at 8:30. So we'll continue with our discussion on this item. So once again, I'd like to put this to members with regard to the items that we discussed, and there are 4 items that have been approved by members, and these proposals will be placed before the FC meeting on the 21st of February. So for the 4 items that we just endorsed, I'd like to ask members again, whether or not you'd like to single them out for separate voting? No such request. Okay, so we'll continue with our meeting on the 29th. Thank you for coming. Thank you.